welcome to Crossview Radio Weekly podcast for Wayne County. I'm John Marino, pastor of Crossview Church in Orrville. We exist to glorify God by exalting Christ and magnifying the gospel for the joy of all nations. The trouble with elephants is that they're really hard to see, especially when they're standing in a room directly in front of you. And we do have an elephant in the room that I would like to point out so that everybody can see it clearly. You may need to squint a little bit and focus real good so that you can see it. And I am convinced that by the conclusion of today's podcast, the elephant in the room will be so clearly seen by everyone that no further discussion on this issue will be required. Over the past several weeks, we have talked a lot about terms like systemic injustice, social justice, woke, oppressors, victims, etc. And one of the things that we've observed is the significance of language in defining of terms. After all, who doesn't want social justice? Who wants systemic injustice? Who doesn't want to fight for the oppressed? Who wants to be a victim? The issue, of course, is in how these terms are redefined to mean something else entirely. Do I want to fight for social justice? Absolutely. Do I believe in the present day social justice movement? Absolutely not. Do I want to fight systemic injustices? Absolutely. Do I believe in systemic injustices in the way that the woke define it? Absolutely not. Do you want to talk about social justice? Do you want to talk about systemic injustice? Do you want to talk about being awake or being woke? Do you want to talk about oppressors and victims? Do you want to talk about these terms in a biblical way? Then you need to talk about the elephant in the room, and that is abortion. Abortion is the human rights crisis of our generation. Abortion is the Holocaust of our generation. If there is anything that is systemic, it is abortion. Since Roe v. Wade, over 63 million babies have been murdered. 63 million. If anything is systemic, it is this. This is the great evil of our day. Now, of course, we're not saying that it is systemic in the same way that CRT advocates say racism is systemic. Remember what Delgado, the author of Critical Race Theory, said? He said this, quote, "By contrast, many critical race theorists and social scientists hold that racism is pervasive, systemic, and deeply ingrained. If we take this perspective, then no white member of society seems quite so innocent," end quote. Systemic injustice in the eyes of the woke loses sight of the trees in the forest. It says that if there is a systemic injustice here, that every individual down to the last man or woman is guilty. That's why he can say no white member of society seems quite so innocent. Systemic injustice for the woke has to do more with placing people in categories and not seeing the individuals inside of those categories. You're white, so I know everything I need to know about you. You're black, so I know what I need to know about you. Now, of course, I'm not proposing the same thing at all. I've been spending the last several weeks demonstrating and showing that these ideas are unbiblical. Okay? I'm not saying that I believe in systemic injustice as defined by the world. But I am saying that if we are going to talk about justice, and if we're going to talk about injustice, and if we're going to talk about oppression, and if we're going to talk about victims, then we have got to talk about abortion. And this is the elephant in the room that nobody wants to acknowledge. 63 million babies dead. But acknowledge it we must. Abortion involves an oppressor and a victim. The victim is obviously the baby. The womb used to be one of the safest places on the planet. Now it's a place where babies are burned, dismembered, and poisoned. John Calvin said, "If it seems more horrible to kill a man in his own house than in a field, because a man's house is his place of most secure refuge, it ought surely to be deemed more atrocious to destroy a fetus in the womb before it has come to light." Abortion is a sin of a systemic nature, meaning, and I'll define what I mean by this, meaning that it is ingrained in our culture. And if you don't think it's ingrained, how did we get to 63 million dead babies? It's not systemic in the sense that CRT advocates suggest. It's not systemic in the sense that everybody either falls into an oppressor or victim paradigm. It's not systemic in the sense that all mothers are oppressors and all babies are victims, obviously. But in the specific instances of abortion, the mother is, yes, the oppressor, and the baby is, yes, the victim. It is systemic in this sense that it is simply pervasive. And speaking of the oppressor-victim model, Laura Clausen has an excellent little video on this topic. Here's a clip of it.
Instead of my body, my choice, what we should be saying is our bodies, my choice. Because when you're pregnant, as the larger, stronger body, it's totally up to you about what happens to the smaller, weaker body inside your body. Because that's fair. That's what human rights are all about.
Side note, anything that Laura has done on addressing abortion is excellent. If you have not seen her new short video on this, you must see it. It will be prepared. It will make you cry, but you must see it nonetheless. And also, the pro-aborts need to see this video. They definitely need to see this video because this video, I'm not going to give any spoilers on this, but it functions as forcing the pro-aborts to say, yes, I do admittedly have to support this if I'm going to support abortion. And by God's grace, hopefully it will lead them away from that. But you have to see her new little video on this. Okay, the thing I like about this clip, though, that you just heard, is that she's speaking their language. You want to talk about oppressor and victim? Then let's talk about the stronger and bigger person, the mother, imposing her will on the smaller and weaker person, her child, via abortion. But the world goes to incredible lengths to justify this. Even going as far as identifying, and yes, this happens, even going as far as identifying the mother as the victim instead of the child. This would be analogous to identifying the slave owner as the victim and those working to abolish slavery as the oppressors. It is a complete and entire reversal of justice. And speaking of slavery, by the way, the logic of abortion is the same as the logic of slavery. You may recall from your history lessons, if they teach that anymore today in school, the Dred Scott decision of 1857. It was ruled by the Supreme Court that Dred Scott, because he was black, was not a person. He was a non-person because he was property. Because of that, he had no right to even be in court. This line of reasoning, of course, as we acknowledge today, is disgusting. The Dred Scott decision is a horrible reality, a horrible blight on our country's history. But interestingly enough, the reasoning of Roe v. Wade is exactly the same. Now, thankfully, of course, this has been overturned today, just recently here. But the thinking behind it remains ingrained in our culture. Roe v. Wade said that the baby inside of the mother is a non-person, the same exact thing as the Dred Scott decision. This is the great irony of our day. It is the social justice warrior relying on a pro-slavery argument who argues in favor of injustice against the unborn. Thus, murder flourishes under a facade of justice. If you're not concerned about the victims perishing in front of your very eyes, you're not qualified to educate society on the nature of justice, which is why we don't need a secular solution to the injustice of our day. And I'll even go one step further and say this is why we don't need a conservative secular solution to the problems of our day. We need a biblical solution. We need Christ. We need the Bible. Thanks for listening to Crossview Radio. I'm John Marino, pastor of Crossview Church in Orville. We meet Sundays at 10 a.m. To find out more about Crossview Church, visit us online at crossvieworville.com.